Hi there! Welcome to Cook Local, Eat Local, the podcast where you can find inspiration, tips, and recipes for enjoying more local food and drink. I am David Crowley, your host. In today's episode, we'll be chatting with Amanda Scarlati about what we can make with this week's vegetables. Amanda is a classically trained chef, wife, and mother of four who is the owner and creator of the food blog Scarlatti Family Kitchen. It is week 2 of our CSA pickup in the summer of 2023. It is almost the 4th of July weekend, and let's see what is fresh and local this week. First thing sticking up out of the bag is a big bunch of carrots with the tops. Buying them at the store, we don't often get the tops, but there's actually some good things you can do with them. And another veggie with its tops, radishes coming right up. And I see something leafy trying to get out, but that's gonna have to wait because we have peas in the pod. Peas in the pod. I believe those are what are called English peas, and they're actually the basic peas you would get in the frozen food aisle, but these are fresh. Then we have kale, Tuscan kale specifically. It's a little bumpy. And ooh, this smells good. If you like dill and the dill smell, maybe make some pickles, dill pickles, or something else. We'll find out what Amanda has to say. And then, yeah, some nice leafy green lettuce. And oh, this might be one of the final items, more peas, but these are the kind of peas where you eat the whole pod, unlike these big old peas. And oh, there is one more thing. It is still strawberry season here. Fresh local strawberries. And let's stay tuned as I chat with Amanda and see what ideas she comes up with for these fruits and veggies. Well, hello, Amanda. Thank you for joining us on Cook Local, Eat Local.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. Looking forward to the conversation. And as you know, I have some veggies that we want to talk about ideas for. But before getting into this, I always like to start with getting a little sense of your backstory. As I've been doing the show, I think I find some people that are like me and learned how to cook as adults, while others are kind of lifelong or as close to it as you can be cooks. So where do you fall in that spectrum? Are you a long time interest in cooking, or is it a new development?
You know what? I've always been interested in cooking since I was little. I make the joke that like when I was little, I instead of watching Saturday morning cartoons, I would watch all the PBS cooking shows that were on,
Wow.
like Julia Child and Martin Yan. And I would sit there and I had this little notebook and I would sit there and I would write down notes. And so I've always been interested in cooking and eventually led me to go to culinary school and then eventually kind of start making it a career through my food blog.
Wow, that is definitely a through line in interest in cooking. I haven't heard too many. I actually had a guest on the show a few months ago that actually got to cook with Julia once, but
Oh, really? Oh, man, that would be awesome. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
a foodie for life.
yeah. All right, I like that. Foodie for life. Okay, that's the good
Yeah.
hashtag or something. Excellent.
Yeah.
And how about now? So I know your blog has a focus on Italian food, and is that also kind of lifelong, or how did that evolve into your food story?
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved cooking and eating Italian food. Just something I've always enjoyed. And then when I met my husband back in 2010, he grew up in an Italian American family in Chicago. And so there's a lot of uh, traditions and recipes that go along with that. And so as we started our family, then we eventually kind of incorporated that into our lives. And we moved out of the Chicago area back in 2017. And so that was something that was really important to us is to keep doing those type of traditions and the foods and the recipes.
Mhm.
And so my blog was a way for me to kind of keep that focus on that love of food and bringing my family together with food. Um, and and at the same time, I get to teach other people kind of the basics of putting those recipes together, using my culinary background so that
Mhm.
they can do the same thing for their families. Because I
Oh,
think that's really important.
yeah, yeah, that is great. I like that. Yeah, I mean, family traditions around cooking are definitely a great way to bring people together. I know It's probably true across many, if not all cultures, but I think Italians do it particularly well from both my experience
It's
with
always a big
Italian.
event. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Well, we'll certainly circle back to that. I love Italian food and cooking it as well. Not quite as laser focused on it as you, but definitely enjoyed. So we'll definitely pepper that into the conversation here. But I do want to get to, some people tune in. They want to hear what to cook with what is seasonal. So I give you a little
Yeah.
preview of that. So let's start with the first one I have in mind, which is to talk about kale and the specific kind of kale. Now, most people listening to the audio of the podcast will not see this, but it is a variety of kale. I don't know how well you can even see. Yeah, so it's Tuscan kale. It's got the bumps and stuff like that. Yeah, so uh, Tuscan, I don't know how big kale is with a certain kind of kale with Tuscan in the name. Is kale common in Italian cooking, or any information or insight on that?
Yeah, Tuscan kale is probably honestly my favorite because it is a little
Mhm.
bit more mild.
Yeah.
So it's not as bitter as other forms of kale, and
Mhm.
it definitely has its place in Italian cooking. Some other people might know it as like dinosaur or the lacinato kale,
Yeah.
is another word for it. And it really can be used kind of like any sort of other green. I mean, makes great salads. You can obviously use it in a green juice or a smoothie.
Hmm.
I particularly like making it sauteed with some really good olive oil, garlic, and maybe some crushed red pepper flakes or something like that. And it makes a really good side. Um, just keeping it simple because it's got like a very mellow, earthy flavor.
Hmm.
So you can do quite a bit with it.
Yeah, and so like if you saw a recipe that just called for kale, would you use that? Yeah, I haven't really thought too much about how different they are. I tend to use them somewhat interchangeably, but that's a good point. I get that it is a little milder, especially maybe for some people are a little anti-kale. I don't know if that's really tried this.
It's a yeah, it's a good kale for the anti-kale people because
Yeah.
it is more mellow. And depending on what you're pairing it with, if you were doing a salad where you're adding fruit or something like that, then that might pair with it better because it's a little more mellow flavor. Or for someone that you don't want to kind of sneak it in,
Yeah.
into a salad with some other greens, that might be another good option.
That's a good idea. Great, great. I also love to make a kale pesto. I don't know if that's like heretical as an Italian cook person to use anything but basil and for a pesto, or if you branch out.
No, I've done a few different kinds of pesto, and kale pesto is actually really good. And so it would be good for pesto, because it is more mellow.
Yeah, that makes sense. And great. Maybe before I get to the next vegetable, actually, just what we're talking about here, ask me a question. Italian food can mean a lot of things. I think some people have a pretty narrow conception of it. What kind of recipes are you featuring both, for your family on the blog? Is it a pretty big range? Does it focus on any regions, or I don't know if you could give us a little more of a flavor for the range of food recipes we could find on your site?
Yeah, I do what I like to say Italian inspired because
Mhm.
um, I never want to take advantage of the true, authentic Italian
Mhm.
recipes. And I do have some true, authentic Italian recipes, but I think authentic Italian, being in Italy and Italian American recipes can vary quite a bit
Yeah.
just based on the cultures and traditions and things like that. So I would say I do have some traditional, like I said, authentic recipes like carbonara and gnocchi and that sort of thing, but a lot of them are more Italian inspired or Italian American food. And I do have a lot of comfort food because from my background and my food, from my family, it's kind of a mesh of that. But
Mm.
I'd say probably Italian American is the bulk of what's on there.
Yeah. I like that phrase, Italian inspired. Hopefully, as you probably know, there's definitely some people that get, especially maybe if they really are focused on that authentic recipe or what their grandmother made, they can
Yeah.
sometimes you get almost like a little angry if you like take too much liberty with a traditional recipe. But hopefully, it seems like people can go with that spirit of being an Italian inspired.
Right. Well, and I always try to focus on the history of it too, and say,
Mhm.
this is where it came from and pay homage to that and say,
Yeah.
as it came over to America, this is kind of how it morphed. And like,
Yeah.
this is how, because I think like even with something like, a Sunday sauce, you'll
Mhm.
get a great divide on how that is done,
Yeah.
depending
Right.
on
Right.
where you live and what it's called and what you put in it and what you don't put in it. And so, everybody does it differently. And so I try to focus on the history of it and,
Mhm.
hey, this is how, my husband's family did it, or this is how we do it. And so people kind of understand the why behind it.
Right. That makes sense. Great. Well, let's also throw out, I didn't bring, I think most people know what carrots look like. So I have basic
Yeah.
carrots when they came with the
Okay.
top speed. So if you have any ideas on that. So what ideas do you have for carrots? I will say I do, I'll just preface this by saying, so I do like a seasonal CSAs from a local farm. And then I do this other like local food delivery that is year round sourcing from a bunch of farms and local producers. But the
Okay.
bottom line is here in New England, we see a lot of carrots, especially when we're not in peak summer season. So I'm hoping you get something creative or something else something that I haven't tried yet because I sometimes am at a little bit of a loss on what else to do with them.
Lots of carrots. Yeah, carrots are great because they're a little bit sweeter. So, they can have a little bit more of a variety to them. I personally love roasted vegetables a ton.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I do too.
carrots are great for roasting because they have quite a bit of high sugar content. So that will caramelize and kind of make some really good crispy edges. And for that same reason, sauteing or pan frying, with a little bit of olive oil is great. You could add fresh herbs like, dill or even rosemary or parsley or thyme is really good with carrots too.
Okay.
And I've also like either saute them up with a little bit of butter or olive oil, and you can serve them with crumbled like goat cheese or feta on top.
Sounds good.
You can also toss them in like a simple vinaigrette too, and they're great to add to salads. So they're pretty versatile, but I think roasting is probably one of my favorites.
I like that. And so when you saute the sauteed idea, do you slice them pretty thin, I would think, because probably take a while to cook if they're thick.
Yeah, depending on the size of the carrots. I mean, sometimes you can get those really thin, tiny ones
Hmm.
that are great for that. But if they're larger, slicing them into coins or smaller pieces will
Hmm.
allow them to kind of quickly cook
Yeah.
while still kind of caramelizing and getting that brown on them as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Now, what about, do you find, think about different Italian recipes for different sauces and stuff. Do you tend to also do that like in the base for you know, a bolognese or something like that? I see that sometimes. I wouldn't go out and buy one for that personally, but maybe if I have one there, might throw it in. I don't know if that's typical for you or kind of not so much.
Yeah, and again, there's a great divide on how to make sauce. But
Yeah,
authentically, a bolognese will have like a celery and carrot type
yeah.
base, with onion and that sort of thing. And so you can do that. I also will do kind of I like to call it my hidden vegetable sauce, where I do it a lot towards the end of summer where I have a lot of produce
Mhm.
and I saute up a lot of vegetables. So
Yeah,
zucchini and squash, carrots are always in there, and then
yeah.
tomatoes, and then you blend it and you can toss it with pasta. And my kids don't even know that the vegetables are in there, but it still tastes
Nice.
like pure summer with all these great summer vegetables in it. So those are a
Yeah.
couple options you could do for sauce.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. I like that. I like that idea. Sounds like a good way to use stuff up when you have something in abundance and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and then I'll even, I mean, because it makes quite a bit, and I'll freeze it, so then
Hmm.
you can kind of use it even past summer when you don't always
Yeah.
have access to those vegetables. So
And did I see you're in Salt Lake City? Did I read that right?
yep, in the Salt Lake City area, yep, in Utah.
Yeah. So that like end of summer for you. I'm just curious. I'm guessing your growing season probably looks different than here in New England, but like or is it still those kind of I would think you have maybe more extended growing season or
Yeah, we actually like farmers markets and everything will actually go in through October sometimes, and
yeah.
just depending. This past year it got cold very early, and so it kind of threw things off, and our winter has lasted really late this year. So
Oh,
we
okay.
so far, knock on wood, have had a very mellow summer. So it's been a little bit late to the game. But yeah, we can still, growing season can still go into, September and even
Yeah.
sometimes October, depending on
Yeah.
what you're growing.
Great, great. Yeah, the third item that I wanted to talk to you about that you mentioned briefly once already is dill. Get some fresh dill, which I don't get a whole lot. I mean, it's my thing. If I have a specific recipe, I might get it, but I don't use it as much as parsley or basil or something. So curious what you might think to do with the fresh basil. I mean, fresh dill, excuse me. You probably have
Yeah.
other things with fresh basil too, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, you could roast them with or saute them with your carrots because that's I think it adds a really nice fresh flavor to the carrots. I also love using the fresh dill out of my garden to do pickles. So adding that to a quick pickle with some cucumbers to make pickles. Or I really love pairing it with salmon. So if I am like baking or roasting a piece of salmon, I'll put some fresh dill on there, maybe with, lemon, and it goes really well with that too.
Oh, that does sound like a good combo. So actually, you mentioned gardening. I was gonna ask, that kind of jumps into that, sort of how you are sourcing, fresh local produce for your cooking. Is gardening a big part of it for you, or maybe a variety of sources?
Yeah, a variety of sources, I would say. We have several farmers markets in the valley here that are really great. One that's pretty close by that I frequent quite a bit. And they have a ton of great farmers that are there. There's
Hmm.
also a local co-op that I'll sometimes get, baskets through with different seasonal fruits and vegetables. And then I do grow some stuff. I not a ton of stuff in my garden, but I do have like a variety of herbs and we always usually have peppers and tomatoes, and kids always like growing a watermelon,
Nice.
and we'll do sugar snap peas too. Those are another favorite of
Oh,
ours.
oh, nice. Yeah. So enough to, especially fresh herbs are great to grow if you can, because they're like cost ineffective to buy at the store. Like, especially if you don't need, if you need a tablespoonful or something, you're paying like $3, $4 easily for a portion that you don't really need all of it.
Oh, I know. It kills me if I like don't have it for some reason. I have to go to the buy, the whole package for like $3 for just this tiny little piece. So I try to keep them growing as long as I can. So because they're way better too, fresh.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of been interwoven through what you've said a little bit, but if I could, I'd love to hear a little bit more on your take on just the role of, using fresh seasonal produce in general in Italian cooking and how that plays out for your cooking.
Yeah, I mean, I think in Italian cooking, especially, during the warmer months, or I mean, any months really, there is a big emphasis on seasonal cooking and using what's available.
Hmm.
Italian cooking comes from humble beginnings. And so, way back when, that's what they used. And even when people came over to America, they didn't have a ton of money and it was you used what was seasonal. And I'm a big proponent in seasonal cooking because that when you're using those tomatoes right when they're in season, you get the
Hmm.
best possible flavor and the best possible texture to all of your ingredients. And so it really makes your food that much better. And it's like, these summertime vegetables or fruits, it gives you that feeling of summer too,
Right.
and so it's
Yeah.
not fun to cook and eat with.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And do you have any Italian favorites for the summer season that you like to make?
Fresh produce, like I said, is huge. Tomatoes, we love tomato salad. My husband grew up eating it, and it's something we make constantly now. Just tomatoes, some fresh basil, mozzarella and a vinaigrette.
Yeah.
We also love grilling fruit. That was a big thing that his family used to do, and we do it now. And so, nectarines or peaches or plums, you can grill and it makes them slightly sweet. And then serve them just simply with like some regat or mascarpone whipped with a little
Yeah.
bit of honey or sugar, just sweetened somehow. And it's
Hmm.
just very simple, but light and delicious. Um, and so those are kind of our go-tos, I would say. We'll still do pasta, but it'll be like lighter or,
Yeah.
have seafood or tomatoes.
Hmm.
And then we do have been known to grill a pizza or two as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So that's another fun summer favorite for us
Oh,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, nice. Now, going back to the grilled fruit, that sounds tasty. I'm curious. I'm trying to picture what that looks like. Are you is it generally putting the whole fruit right on the grill, or like some kind of grill pan type contraption? Or
Yeah, it depends on your grill grates, obviously, what kind of grill grates you have and the size of the fruit, but like peaches, I will just cut in half, remove the pit, and then put them flesh side down. I'll brush them with a little bit of olive oil just so they don't stick, and then grill them 5 or 7 minutes just till they start to soften. You don't want them too
Okay.
mushy, but just often just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an awesome summer dessert, especially if you're already like, grilling steaks or
Yeah, right.
any sort of kebabs or meat or something else. And it's kind of a fun dessert or even side dish.
Yeah, that definitely sounds very delicious. I'll have to give that a try for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the any other kind of, I mean, we've kind of covered a lot already, but any other tips you have up your sleeve for just how people can lean into that, seasonal cooking, using what's fresh and local?
Yeah, I would say, look into different organizations in your community. So look at the farmers markets,
Mhm.
CSAs, co-ops,
Yeah,
see what's available. A lot of towns and areas will have kind of a listing of those kind of local resources. And I'm a huge proponent in buying local because, it helps everybody.
right.
And you're going to, again, get the best possible product as well. And see what they're using and what they're bringing to the markets, and like that's my favorite thing to do is go and see what they have available and then
Yeah,
try to come up with something
yeah,
to
that's
use
that's
those ingredients for.
right. Yeah, that's definitely a fun way to do it. Yeah, so that sounds good. So can you give us an example of, you've covered a few things already, but maybe just something delicious you've made lately that leans into those concepts of finding the fresh and local?
Yeah, well, berry season is huge right now,
Yeah.
and strawberries and blueberries specifically. So I was able to get some really delicious blueberries the other day, and
Mm.
I made a crostata.
Mm.
So, which you might have heard it called a galette. It's
Oh yeah.
essentially
Mm.
just like a rustic pie for those who
Hmm.
aren't familiar with it. It's made kind of just on a sheet pan instead of in an actual pie dish.
Yeah.
But it's really good when you have some delicious fruit, and you could do it with any type of fruit. So,
Yeah.
right now, like I said, berries are really good. Cherries are at their peak season right now. So
Mhm.
any type of fruit, peaches, when we get into that here in about a month or so, are also really good in that. And I mean,
Mhm.
you could even go into fall with apples,
Oh yeah. Oh, using
and
the
that
same
sort of
basic.
thing, or
It's
pears. Yeah.
so it's like a pie crust type, pretty much.
Yeah, you just essentially you can make a homemade pie crust, or you could purchase one, whichever you prefer, and lay it on a sheet pan, and then you kind of make a pie filling, with the fruit and some sugar, and put that in the middle, and then fold up the ends of the pie dough onto it, so it kind of makes an outside crust, and then
Mhm.
I like to put a little egg wash on it and some like really crunchy turbinado sugar, so it gets
Oh
a
yeah.
nice
Oh,
crispy crust on the
yeah.
edges, and it's kind of a fun little rustic, and you kind of cut it. It looks like a pizza almost once you cut into it, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
a
Oh,
fun summertime dessert, with ice cream or whipped cream or something like that.
yeah, that does sound perfect for summer, definitely. And it probably doesn't have to be in the oven too long before it's ready to go. And,
No, it's quick to make. It's easy to make. So, I don't like turning the oven on a ton in my house during
right.
summertime because it's hot.
Yeah.
But this is a good one because it doesn't take too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, lots of great ideas, and I'm getting hungry, and I'm guessing people want to know where they can find out more information. So let's give us the basic info on where people can find you on the web and social platforms and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always find me on Facebook or Instagram at Scarlatti Family Kitchen is my handle, or you can also find all of my recipes or contact me through my website, which is scarlattifamilykitchen.com.
All right. Well, excellent, Amanda. I will definitely be checking it out for some Italian inspired food very soon for
Woohoo!
sure.
Yay!
So I look forward to that. So it's
Yeah.
been great having you on, and I look forward to following and checking out your recipes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cook Local, Eat Local. To get the show notes with links for recipes and resources we covered today, go to cooklocaleatlocal.com to get the podcast landing page. And please be sure to subscribe to Cook Local, Eat Local wherever you get your podcasts. Make it a great day. with some tasty local food on your plate.